And we're back, and we're moving into our first conversation for this morning. We're joined by two representatives of PETAL. We have with us the coordinator, Simone Hill, and Ifasina Efunyemi, the secretary of PETAL. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, ladies, thank you for coming in and being open to having this conversation with us as we try to look at what happened over the weekend with PC Gillett and have a reflection on what actually takes place within the LGBT community as they interact in the country. And I want to start off by just getting your initial reaction to the videos that you saw, and especially the insults that were hurled at him in the video itself.
For me, it was quite upsetting, to say the least, to watch something like that happen. I mean, I was just on the 20th, I think, recently, went to San Pedro on that water taxi, and I was like, what if that had happened to me? I mean, I can't fathom it happening to me, but if it could happen to someone, we're occupying the same earth. Once something can happen to one person, it can also happen to you. Yeah. And for that, I am totally in disagreement with what transpired, and I am concerned about it because in terms of safety at the water taxi, I think the company has to look at that in terms of how people are being allowed on a boat. But also what it reflects on is how people are treating other people. That total lack of respect, and that concerns me very much. It's upsetting, to say the least, what happened.
Yeah. Any reaction from you, Simone?
Yeah, one of the things that when I first saw it, I was socializing with my family, and I couldn't believe, as I saw the picture of the person that was being assaulted, I said, this person looks familiar, and then I was told that it's a police officer. But the thing that happened, it's with how all it happened and how people have that aspect of telling you things, anything that comes out of their mouth, like it's okay to tell me what you feel. And then to come to the end of that video to see how the chokehold was put, or the hold was put on this person. Is it even legal? And since we have a lawyer here, is it legal in Belize to do something as that? And we have seen in our neighbor, the United States, where this was under it came under great outcry from the community when a black person was killed with that type of chokehold. And so during this time, even though we are not celebrating Pride in Belize, we know that our neighbors are celebrating this month of June, and the last Sunday of June is celebrated as Pride Day. And so it is so appalling to see coming into the end, celebrating with our neighbors and things like that, that this would happen.
And what of specifically, because there are several layers to this issue, and one is the altercation that took place on the boat. We have been told PC Gillett's side of the story, which is that he was basically insulted because of his sexuality, and things escalated into the brawl that we see. And clearly we can see his involvement in that as well. And that's why I want to say, if we could talk a bit about the things that you hear people saying in the video, because I think that perhaps is one of the more disturbing parts of the video. And even in the very end, when he's being put in the chokehold, people shouting out from the boat and chanting when an unconscious man is slapped to his face.
It really is showing us how far behind we are as a people. I think about the fact that when you hear of a person like Frantz Fanon talking about the psychology of the oppressed and how we are with our own selves, because we feel no power to address those who oppress and violate us. So we turn to those who are the weakest to us, often those who are the closest to us and most vulnerable. And that is also what feeds into, for example, what abusers do, because they might actually be having a bad day at work and can't deal with the boss, but they can come home and beat on their partners or beat on their children. And it happens in the school setting, the workplace, and so on. People are tired, they're fed up, they're frustrated, and the easiest person to turn that on is the nearest person who is maybe in the very same situation as they are, but that's the person that they can fight with. Imagine if it were a case where the police were the ones brutalizing a person, like what we have seen happen in different neighborhoods, how everybody just gets upset about what that violation that is happening. But people felt justified, like a pack of dogs, to pick on a person and use something that they think is justifiable as a reason to support this behavior. But I want people to think about this. There has always been so much discrimination against us, hurled against us. If you're born with a particular genitalia, especially if you're female, you're already at a disadvantage because you're female. And in many spaces, many countries, being born female puts you at such a grave disadvantage that you can be mutilated, you can be raped, you can be violated, you don't have options to go to school, and so many other things. Then if you're born with a particular color of skin, you also have that disadvantage. So imagine that happening. Any of those women who violated that young man could have been subjected to that same exact kind of violation in another space. So if people would recognize that as human beings, this kind of discrimination cannot be accepted in any way. In any way, it cannot be accepted, because if you stand around and watch it happen to somebody, if you feel it justified for it to happen to somebody, that means it is justified to happen to you. And it can happen to you. And it might not happen to you directly or immediately, but it could. And it could happen to your child, to your brother, to your sister, to somebody you love and care about. So how could we sit together, all of us, and watch a violation happen and be okay with it, and find it justified for it to happen?
Now, I think Marlene kind of captures what's in my head, which is that there are very many layers to this, and I guess the lawyer in me is coming out a little. But there are different parts to what happened. And the initiating portion is one that we have not really sorted out. So we don't know what started the altercation. We've heard two versions, and we are unable to independently verify either version. There are certain things which are undeniable, like the fact of the very hateful remarks by the passengers when they're coming out. Very homophobic remarks. Those are clear and unacceptable. Doesn't matter that people are drunk on a vessel coming back from a party, it is inexcusable. But when you have those two black and whites, the in-betweens, there are lots of questions. Like, for example, no matter what sexual orientation the police officer is, what is acceptable behavior for someone who is in altercation, who's a police officer? What ought he have done? That's one. Two, I was concerned because I was listening to everything, and my question was, I know that there is a certain level of respect that you allow for somebody to decide to say, I am gay or I am not. And I'm not sure that I had heard from the individual of him sharing that with Belize. I heard everything else, and so you put two and two together, but I thought out of respect, shouldn't he have had the opportunity to say, listen, this is where I am in terms of my sexual orientation, and this is a hate crime. So that long interval to say, how do we separate it? there are certain things which he did which were wrong, in my book. And there are certain things which the society did which are unacceptable. How do we separate the two, and can we go piece by piece so it doesn't look like we are justifying something which is wrong, or either another washing away something which is not so either?
Two wrongs, as we really know, do not make a right. So let's say, for argument's sake, because I think I heard a story about a seat and seat being reserved for someone. This does not exist in public transportation as a reality, because the ticketing system doesn't guarantee you that seat, like this seat is my seat. I want people to understand taking responsibility for yourself, your person, because you really only have control over your person. You don't have control over other people. So for example, if I am in public transportation and there is someone coming to sit next to me that I don't feel comfortable sitting next to, is it for me to say to this other human being that I have no control over, please remove yourself from my seat, because that person has a right to be there, also has paid also to be on that public transportation. But what do I have the power to do? I have the power to remove myself from that space to find somewhere else that is more comfortable for me. Because that is, out of the 256 possibilities, that is definitely one that I can take. I can remove myself from a situation that I would not be comfortable in. And how reasonable is it for me to demand for somebody else to do something to please me? How reasonable is that? You can do something for yourself, like if someone is watching this show right now and they are not pleased that I am wearing this pink shirt, or they are not pleased with what I am saying, should they call or write Channel 5 and say, do not have Miss Efunyemi on the show anymore, and try to control you having us on the show? Or should they just turn off the TV or change the channel? Because that's what they have the power to do.
They have that choice,
You understand what I'm saying? So if it is about the issue of the seat, what different choice could the person have made rather than taking this aggressive approach?
Not only that, but you said that the guy, you said about the person's, basically what the person said.
Yeah.
And then the individual who the homophobic slurs were thrown after.
Yeah.
I don't think that what the video shows and the many things that were happening, people have this tendency, and I will say it again, to tell you what they believe is their right to tell you. And so clearly what all that was said is that there was homophobic slurs that were thrown.
And
why?
That's part of where I want to hone in, because one of the things that we know for sure is that there is homophobia in Belize. And it's been a while since we've seen it in such a public sphere. When the Section 53 case was ongoing, we saw it very much in all the messages online and all the response to our stories, to our conversations happening here. In the public discourse, it was a lot more visible to hear the hate that some people have against people who identify of a different sexuality. And this particular instance, and like I said, and I agree with Kevin, we can't get into what happened in the fight because we don't know the details. But what we do know for sure is that a bunch of people who are unrelated to this young man chose to shout what they did, and those were death threats. Let's not minimize that. Those were death threats that were made at him as he was being detained by the police. And it is a very glaring reality of the homophobia that exists in this country. The question I have to you is, a lot of times when we hear stories like this, it tends to be about homosexual men. Now, you are here identifying as lesbians. You're a part of a lesbian organization. Do you find it to be a widespread issue that both men and women and transgender persons are seeing this level of discrimination where people feel, and I think Simone said it, that they can say whatever they want to you about what you identify to be?
Yes, it does exist. And it takes a special kind of strength and consistent standing up for yourself to combat that. Don't think that because as I am sitting here on this TV, it has been easy to do that. And it continues to be a fight. Maybe people will not say to me directly now whatever it is that they're thinking, but it doesn't mean that they are not still having their own sidebar conversations. And I take the position that, okay, you can say what you want to say. It hopefully has no influence over my progress in life, my survival. But because of the spirituality that I subscribe to, negative talk is just as bad as physical assault, and it can negatively impact your life. So I do follow spirituality very strongly so that I am protected by those forces that people cannot see. So their mouth can run all they want. I do positive things, I live my life to the best of my ability, and I do good for my community. People who can't appreciate that is their problem. That is their issue. But
No, sorry.
you know, I think it's important for us to continue to be our best selves and to stand up for ourselves, not to just accept this behavior.
No, I wanted to actually go back before we jump there, because to me there is an important aspect of this. And again, I was talking about my legal hat, which was, let's assume that this scenario, which we're not saying that this is actually the scenario, but we're saying this for the premise of the furtherance of this point in the discussion. Let's say that the young man tried to sit at the seat and he was given some unacceptable racist slur by this lady. And he then proceeds to do what? Let's say he has, as you were saying, he has 256 choices. But he proceeds then to hit her. Then, as you say, then two wrongs do not make a right. And I think that that is an important aspect of dealing with the side of the community itself, to know what the community does when they're faced with these illegal acts. The response by the community, by the LGBT community, cannot be to engage in the same level of violence or the same level of hate and hurt that is put on them. There's an offense called assault. Assault is I tell you something which causes you to feel hurt. Mm-hmm. And so this is a police officer who had he had 257 options, not 256. Now, my question goes to this aspect of it now. As the community looks at these sorts of actions, how does the community take it? How does the community divide up what was done right from what was done which is unacceptable? How does the community divide the two?
Well, we haven't spoken to every person who because we don't know who all identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, etc. But what I can say for myself, and I'm talking with our membership, when you see a situation like that, you first can react as a human being to the violation that occurred in the end, because every single person in the situation had a choice. Every single person, not just the police officer. We don't know all that he has had to take. And this is the thing that people don't understand, that sometimes you are the straw that breaks the camel's back. So all the while I might compose myself. I, Miss Efunyemi, might compose myself because I bless my Ori in the morning, I said my prayers, I put my Efun on my head. I maintain my calm to avoid dealing with your crap. But today, you came and you pushed my button today. And today, it didn't work in your favor. But you don't know how many times I had made the right choice every time. And this was just the time that I was going to do what you chose to do. You instigated this. You pushed me in this direction because you felt that it was justified for you to do so. You see, that's what I want people to see. Everybody had a choice to do something different, and they didn't. And we don't know how many times in this young man's life he has been having to deal with that. I'm not saying that he needed to be violent, but every time I hear these stories, I get to that level first in my head.
You know what it reminds me of?
People what if people just react every time to the exact way how people treat them?
You know what it reminds me of? In law, there's a thing called battered wife syndrome, which is the same thing. A man goes home every day and beats his wife, and one day she gets home and says, "Tired of you? You can't get it." And she then proceeds to kill him. In law, what it doesn't justify the death. It reduces the punishment that is given for doing so.
There's also provocation.
And that's exactly what it is, provocation.
So, but I really don't want to, because we don't know who threw the first hand. We
Absolutely.
don't know the circumstances. What we do know is that homophobic comments were made, hateful comments, death threats were made. And I think that's where we have to maintain our focus until we know the clarity of what took place on that boat.
Precisely, and Kevin said that what do you do as leaders of this, and to sift through all that. The bottom line is that even what was said to cause it, listen to all that was said. I am here to talk about the homophobic aspect, not any other aspect, and the violation in the end done by the police. Even there, that one young man was fighting for his life, because those people already, that man didn't come to me and said, "I am a gay man." It was perceived, on the video, where you hear that the perception, because they never asked her, but they felt it was justified to say, you and Carla, this homophobic slur, we're not careful mention right now.
Yeah.
But that, and then it starts from there. So like Ifasina said, today was the day that the man in a uniform, they like say that police 24 was never in a uniform, but today that the day he was stand up for himself. And so he answered the lady, and that the way caused it. The bottom line is that people believe they are justified. When the case was coming up, Pastor Wade was inciting violence. I never agreed with it. And that is why I always believe that Belize should have something that protect people, a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill, because it should protect everyone, because they're not only about, I stand on the side for battle homophobia, but as a human being, I want to see everything. People were discriminated against because they old. People were discriminated against because they handicapped.
Yeah.
Especially. So, and all those things that are part of people of the LGBT community.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I hear people talking so much about hate crime. We don't have hate crime legislation in Belize. I know there were talks of a discrimination law, but we're not there yet as well. And what we hear very often is people saying, well, I have free speech. But free speech doesn't necessarily mean that you have the right, especially to threaten death to another person, even legally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and it always come up. You look on Facebook the other day when Caleb came and was speaking on the television about what an organization was doing, an organization of the trans community, and how a young woman felt it was her right to talk, to say these death threats and all these things against him. And that is why I look forward to this anti-discrimination bill that is being pushed. And I think that as a comprehensive bill, I think that all of us can look at it and agree, because like I said, it's comprehensive. So it encaptures everyone.
Is there full documentation? I know Unibam had been working on it for a while. We can't know how bad the situation is unless we see evidence. This is evidence. Seeing the video itself reminds us of the hate that exists in our community. And there are many people who side with the people on the boat who were shouting, and there are still many people as well who abhor it. But what's the level of documentation that we have on the discrimination, the hate, the threats, and even the violence that people of the LGBT community face?
Well, one of the things is Caribbean Vulnerable Coalition Communities, CVC, out of Jamaica had introduced, this region had introduced what is called a Sydney database. And this is to log human rights violations. And so organizations such as UNIBAM, ORS, and the other organization of the LGBT community have been logging these to show, so that we can have evidence that we are not saying this. Because yes, this is one incident. What happened to the others that were not videoed and brought to the forefront?
Not reported, or when they're reported, then the report is lost, or the police doesn't take it, or people just feel discouraged from going to the police because they're going to be ridiculed there, so then they don't report it. You know, there's so many of those incidences that happen too.
And PETAL did a needs assessment, and we had put in that needs assessment, we were interviewing women to find out discrimination. One of the aspects of that was to find out about discrimination and where they find it prevalent in their lives. But women do come under homophobic attacks and things like that. I can speak for my own self. We have had women who were attacked, the perception because of how they dress, like myself, in men's clothing, that they're a lesbian. And that's a perception, because until somebody actually comes out of their mouth and say, I am that, it's a perception. And to have people threaten them and incite violence on them, you know, we have had those things happen. And even where women have gone to the police, but because their dress is masculine, they have been ridiculed and they have been pushed around. And we have those documentation. And like you rightly said, UNIBAM, which is the oldest LGBT organization in Belize, in fact, they have a lot of documentation on this. And let's not even talk about the trans community where it concerns the trans. We know that when this trans woman comes from her village to come to a meeting, the fear of getting on a bus, and she always experiences, once she gets on that public transportation, she experiences all sorts of attacks, verbal attacks.
And you know, I think it's always important to say that violence does include words. There's verbal abuse, and it can have serious implications on a person. But I have a question. You know, we are all Belizeans. We understand the landscape of what we're dealing with. When you look at some of the most progressive countries in this world and how their laws incorporate acceptance of all different persons, there still are challenges in the LGBT community. There still are hate crimes that take place. From your perspective, do you see any progress in Belize's acceptance of the LGBT community as a equal member of society?
It's questionable, because then you see situations like this, and then all of us, you know, first you're under the illusion that all is well, and then this happens, and then you realize, oh, but all is not well, really and truly. So it even depends on in what spaces and where we're navigating to see if that acceptance truly exists. And it isn't that, you see, people believe that you have to, like, you should feel blessed. Maybe they think, you, Miss Efunyemi, should feel blessed that nobody bothers you now. Or you should feel blessed. I am blessed because I'm born here. And I am blessed because I pay taxes here. And I am blessed because I contribute to my society's development. I am not blessed because you think that you could tolerate or accept my sexuality, because my sexuality isn't even your business. And that's the thing that is disturbing, because I'm not sitting here thinking, who you sleep with, why is that even a concern? What about the person as a human being and what that human being brings to the table, what that human being does for Belize's development. You understand what I'm saying? So this thing about acceptance, you don't need to accept anybody because of their sexual orientation. They're human. Just respect another human being. As simple as that. So in certain spaces, yes, it is still very much a challenge. We've had instances in clubs and things like that. People have had bad experiences being in clubs and so on. And like I said, there's this mob mentality that happens. So maybe one you might not see so much violence come out, but once the pack of dogs they're wrong, then all of a sudden now everybody gang up on one person.
There's something that I call homo hypocrisy, which is if you're in a crowd and people are drinking and somebody who is homosexual is around, you hear all the chatter and all the talking and all the insults, but you separate them one by one and you ask them, do you have a problem with somebody who's homosexual or gay? 99% of them will tell you no. So it's almost like it's
peer pressure.
I don't know if it's peer pressure. It's just something that kicks in when, because I remember when the law was around.
It's fitting in.
It's not
to what is assumed
Yeah,
or what used to be the status quo.
But the average Belizean, you ask them. Like, I remember when the law was being challenged, and I asked somebody. I said, you know what? I'm not going to pass this law, and then let's go around in your family and find one person in your family who's homosexual or gay, and let's put that person in jail. Would you agree with that? And 100% of people said no. So I'm trying to figure out how do you deal as a community in terms of looking at, I don't think we'll ever have progress past what people believe is what's supposed to be the social norm, which is that it's supposed to be the church community and heterosexual persons against the homosexual community. How do we navigate past that, any at all?
In life is life. It is real. I like legislators. We cry on the government once we elect them for them to do these 101 things. They go in and they pass laws. We must now use the laws. It is there. This law has been around a long time, Section 53.
Yeah.
Many people knew it was against everybody that did an unnatural crime when having sex, in terms of unnatural sex. One person went up and challenged it. Yeah. It could have been done. Yeah. So when the legislators put the laws there, let's use it. That is why we have 101 liars. And I wish that the 101 liars in Belize or the 102 would take up the case, because the person, the young man, never came to me and said, like you rightly started off saying, it was that he's gay. It is a perception. Yeah. And the person believed that it was okay to just say, move out the way, faggot, or whatever he said, the homophobic slur. So the thing is, Belize have many people where believe that, you know, people are people. These people are LGBT people, and we must leave them to be, because the community has a lot of allies, and your family, for the most part, are your allies. Mm-hmm. And so we do. Now the thing is, maybe what we should do, since you bring it up, maybe we should go do the research all over again and see, because at one time there was a research just before Section 53 came to the courts, and it showed that the Belizean society was tolerant. And like you say, as we go and talk to people one by one, they seem tolerant, but when they get together, that's the problem.
And we have to also, we can't dismiss deliberate psychological conditioning that has happened. All these evangelical churches that don't get screened, that get to come into our country and spew their poison in the name of Jesus, who was not a poisonous individual, they are instigating this kind of hate also. Why are we not taking such a strong stance against the overall violence that exists in our society? The unsafety that our children feel when they're walking in the streets and just existing in Belize. What about all the injustice, the level of corruption? Why are we not speaking on the issues that are truly impacting every single one of us? But again, the psychology of the oppressed. We're picking on our own selves because they're not going to say
They don't
that.
feel empowered to take
They're
on
not
bigger
going to
issues.
say that to the wealthy person's child who is homosexual. They're not going to say anything. They're not going to attack that person. They're not going to slur, say anything, any comments towards that person. It's always someone you see as your equal, someone who is maybe poor like you, or not as educated as you are, or come from the same ethnic group or neighborhood as you are. Then you will feel safe enough to violate that person, but you're not going to do it to other people.
I want to ask a personal question, if you allow me. Ladies, you've been on the show a couple times since PETAL has started. What is it like to be an openly gay person in this country? Because you have members, but we don't see all of them. And they may be openly gay in their own family or communities. But you are public. All of Belize and beyond Belize's borders, they see you, and you're a well-known person, educator, media person. Simone, you've become the face of PETAL. What is it like being an openly gay person in Belize?
I can only say I try not to pay attention to the noise in the market, except to ensure that I am safe wherever I am.
But what you're saying is there is noise.
There is noise. I know there is noise. Sometimes you could feel the, people say, oh, you just read into things. I feel the vibe, Sometimes I remember once I went to a school to talk to children, and because I'm an educator, I can speak as a motivational speaker. I can speak on my experiences, and I'm a positive person. So I went and shared my message with these children, and maybe I believe they must have gone home all excited. Oh, Miss Ifa came and she was talking this and so on. The very next day, after I had spoken to those children and been received, because I always love dealing with children, because children are sincere. Mm-hmm. You can question adults. Adults don't corrupt. But children, they're sincere. So they're going to be real with you. And I saw that in those children. So I felt so good. It's so uplifting to deal with children. But the next day, I saw them again at another occasion. And they seemed like they weren't sure if they should say hi to me. So I knew it must have been. They went home and spoke. They got the corruption right at home. Because that's where children learn to discriminate. It's not natural to discriminate. Discrimination is not something natural to a person, a human being. It is learned behavior. Yeah. And so they must have gone home and said, oh, this lady was there, she talked about this, da, da, da. Then the parent comes along, idiot, says something foolish, and then the child is like, oh, okay, so I shouldn't be associating with this person. So then the child learns not to see goodness in others, but then to not discriminate because of the taint that the parent brings, or other adults that they might have around them.
Yeah. I know Simone wants to jump in, right?
Simone is laughing.
Yes, from the question I was asked, she's tickled to the thing.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't look at it. I am a person, a human being, and I walk around with that mindset. Yeah. And even before I identified, people had brought it to my father when I was a teenager. I didn't even know what that was. And so I walked around, and I feel I love my Belizean people. I am a tour guide, and I always tell the people, my guests, that the people of Belize, what is unique about the Belize is the people. And I go across this country, and no matter what district I go to, what village I go to, the people of Belize the people of Belize are nice people. They are good. They're ready to help you. Yeah. And so I know there are noise in the back, but it's better overall.
Would you agree that the vilest comments are usually reserved for male homosexuals?
Well, yeah,
yes.
You must admit that.
Yes, it is, unfortunately, and again, it's looking at the whole issue of gender and people having judgment about what they think is right or what they think is wrong when it comes to sexual behavior.
It's how we sexualize women, because I hear people say, oh, I don't have a problem with two girls.
And then it's also because a person, again, the perception a person is effeminate, but who is to say that that person is a gay person? people
Even
tend
or a
to
masculine
use,
female, a
people
masculine
just
dressing
tend to
female.
Yeah.
use this thing, and it is their right to use it. It is a right, so there should be a law so that people can sue them. I like it, a lawyer. I wish Patrick Favre would give me a scholarship. I want to be a lawyer, a human rights lawyer.
Immediately,
But
you should.
Where do we go from here? As an organization that represents a group of homosexual persons, and that's specifically lesbian women or women who identify as lesbians and bisexuals, where do we move the conversation beyond just focusing on the hate that we saw in that video? Practical steps, not just, saying we have to do more.
I want to say one of the approaches that we have employed at PETAL is using always the positive approach. So for example, we had done a conversation that dealt specifically with mindfulness. Because we want that people use mindfulness. If you start your day settled, focused, centered, you have more control over what you do with yourself.
Yeah.
And if we are all mindful, then it is less likely, if you're the woman whose seat was taken, that you're going to then get into an argument with a person. It is less likely that if you are a person who is then told something negative, that you're going to get into a back and forth with them because you're centered. That it applies to everybody, not just a special set of people, that all of us be mindful, all of us meditate, all of us center ourselves, be prayerful, be good to other people. That we take that approach.
Yeah.
We also take the approach of teaching people about their rights, so they know that if any violation occurs, these are the actions that can be taken and they should take action. Because just because people have been getting away with violation of rights does not make those violations right. They're still violations. So the more education we provide to people about human rights, the better it is for them. They're more empowered to take a stand.
Are there counseling, just one question, are there counseling services offered by any of the LGBT communities? Because I'm trying to imagine a young man, perhaps like Mr. Gillett or even a little bit older, who perhaps, if we really think of what it's like in Belize, has been bullied all through school, going into high school, bullied as well, perhaps choose to represent visually themselves or represent themselves to the public in a more feminine or unorthodox way, and walks down the street and hears hateful comments, death threats everywhere that they go. And that takes a toll, that constant beating down from
Traumatic.
childhood into adulthood. It's like me versus the world every single day.
When we look at mental health at PETAL, I know at the other organizations also that they provide, and they would, once the people come to them, they would provide that. At PETAL, we do have our volunteer mental health therapists. And so anyone from the community, once they come to us, they can access the mental health therapist. Miss Janine Langsworth is our mental health therapist. And we provide that. Since she has volunteered to do it, we allow for anyone in the community, because we realize that mental health is an issue. And we try to educate our women. And when we have any activity that would encompass the entire LGBT community, we also bring it over to them.
Yeah.
You spoke about what can be done. Education is the key.
Yes.
Miss Ifasina said something that it is in homes.
Yeah.
That is why at PETAL last year, and I want to continue it, that we introduced, we gave it that name, the Parent to Child.
Socialization and stigma and discrimination.
Yes.
Our conversations were focused on that.
Because
children learn, like I mentioned, children learn discrimination. So we, even within the community, are guilty of raising children that end up discriminating because of the things we say, because we are socialized already in a particular way to say something like boys shouldn't cry because that that our being a girl or whatever other comments we might make. So we have to address that. You have to deal with a problem from the root of it, not just deal with symptoms, because getting rid of symptoms does not get rid of illness. So we're trying to get to the root of problems, and that has been our approach as an organization, is to get to the bottom of it. So we've been tackling that, how to get children to be socialized in a different way, in a more wholesome way. Even when we have our Wellness Day in May, it is for children to see that there are many other families like their family. Their family is not abnormal, nothing is wrong with their family. They are sensible, wholesome families. They just happen to have 2 mothers or 2 fathers, but they're still a family. They're still functional human beings raising children.
You know, and Simone kind of hit the nail on the head for where I think the problem is, because discrimination as it relates to homophobia is grounded in 2 things in my mind. It's grounded, 1, in fear, and it's grounded, 2, in trying to get a benefit. So that's the only 2 reasons to my mind that people discriminate. Either they're fearful, based on ignorance, or they're trying to get a benefit. So they're trying to use whatever reason, whether or not it's my sexual orientation, whether or not it's my race, whether or not it's my gender, whatever it is. How do we deal with the adults? I know you say the children really are the step to getting full change and genuine change. But how we get to the adults who have this facade that they have a problem with something that if you ask them privately, 99% of Belizeans will say,
But does not impact their everyday life at all.
So how do we deal with, what is the education process to deal with the adults who are the ones who will engage in this sort of violence and will teach it and spread it? How do we target the adults?
I think we need to reach out to them more. I see this kind of discussion, well, maybe a lot of them not they watch this now though. So maybe this evening they will watch it, hopefully. But more and more discussions that people can see and talk and relate to and understand, get to the bottom of, because you're afraid of something you don't know until you know it. You know, you think about how many times people might say to you, oh, I may always think you are just this miserable person, or I may always think that you are just this uppity person, I may always think. I never know until I finally got to know you. So for me, I think one of the things that I have been able to succeed at is doing the good that I do regardless. So you're going to talk whatever it is you talk. That's you saying what you're saying, but I'm doing the good that I'm doing regardless. And more of us are also doing that, because it's not about wearing my sexuality. Who I sleep with at night, like I said, is not your business. It's not our business. But the good that I do is for the benefit of the community. And whatever we do, if we do good, it's going to benefit the community. If we do bad, it's going to affect the community also, the wider community.
And one of the things is with adults, it's the education. The people who are in power, whatever that power, whether it's at their job or things, needs to take that lead also, because we alone cannot take. If they are the allies, we have our ministers of government, they lead a huge constituency. They are responsible as leaders to calm the society, to speak positively. And so sometimes you need leaders to come out and say something, to talk to we need the father of the nation to talk to the people.
He cannot die though.
The father of the nation, any father that comes is the father of the nation, any prime minister. And we need the minister of national security. You need to come out, talk to their people, because they're the parents, they're responsible for it. And so we the leaders of the various organizations within the LGBT community can educate our own, and we can educate allies, but we also need the leaders in this country, and not only the ministers of government. I must say it was good to hear a special envoy speaking up quickly about it, because I know that she has been one who is behind, she's consistent, and behind the anti-discrimination bill along with Mrs. Longsworth. and also that she wants to see a better police force. And it's not because of the LGBT community, it's because it's necessary for the entire Belize. Violence is so prevalent in this country, it is appalling, and so we need our leaders, and whatever leaders in whatever space, to speak up against the violence perpetrated on people.
You know, can I ask this final question? To me, the swing vote, that's a very bad way to put it. But to me, the turnkey is really the relationship between the community and the church, the evangelical side of the church.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it is fueled, a lot of the lack of progress that we're seeing is really an inability to meet on common ground. And I can't understand why, I cannot understand why there cannot be a common ground between the evangelical leaders of this country and the LGBT community. How can we get to that place, and is it even possible?
The law will get them to that place.
Paper don't mean nothing, man.
The law will get them to that place because people will sue them for the hate that they spew.
Yeah.
And also, they were in America. We never saw these type of evangelicals. They were in America, and they got thrown out of America to places like us because, like Ifasina had said earlier, that who do we scrutinize coming into this country? Who do we scrutinize, and how do we hold them accountable for the hate that they are spewing? It is not love. Maybe we should have a law that says, you know, if you want to be a church in this country, you must preach what
only
you love. We do not need more hate and crime in this country anymore.
They have the 10 Commandments, but that apparently we need to legislate it. But
we should enforce.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But there's a common saying in law that you cannot legislate behavior.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best change is one that we take on ourselves when we can meet as human beings and see where we are common. And I really hope that at some point in time that there is a targeted effort, because we as a country need everybody. And that's why I saw a post which, the only thing I liked about the post was the first line of that post, which was, who are we? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a certain level of denial of who we are. Belize is not just this peaceful, happy place, and I know you say our people are loving, but if you look at the actual facts of the violence that happened in the crime, the hate speech, the abuse, we're a little bit different. And it's not until we can find out and say, this is who we are, that we can change into who we need to become.
We are loving people. You said it. You said that when you talk to people individually.
Yes, that's
so the masses, the leaders need to talk to the masses.
Well, I hope that there's further collaboration, because I think what is being asked of the LGBT community is something that has to be done more widespread. And really and truly, it boils down to human rights.
Yes.
Because when you believe in the dignity of every individual human being, male, female, young, old, fully able, slightly differently abled, homosexual, transgender, or I know people don't necessarily asexual. Thank you. Non-conforming. That's the one I was looking for. They're human beings, and that's
definitely
all that matters, and that's how we should interact with people.
And I say too that if these evangelicals are truly followers of Christ, they would come to the table because Christ don't come at the table long time. Me and the man,
build the table.
We good.
I mean, the more traditional religions in this country have been.
We have met with the bishop, Anglican bishop. We've met with the Catholic bishop.
When the Pope speaks about the LGBT community, it's very clear that there's no room for discrimination. So I think that is one of the areas to tackle. But we do appreciate you coming in. Yes. One, we know in this society it's not easy to be the face of a marginalized community, but we do appreciate you coming in and sharing your insight.
And we appreciate you having us here, because I think each time we have these conversations and people are watching, it changes at least one mind, one heart, and that it's one step at a time, one okra full basket.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about KTV The Remix Season 3, so stay tuned.